Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 346. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and it is my turn to host the quarterly roundtable with some of our podcasting network friends. Join me as we welcome again to the show Kurt Sasso of Two Geeks Talking and Jeffrey Haas of Traversing the Stars.
Well, it's good to be back. It's what's this, year 2 now? Year 3 of
year 2?
I think we're working on year 2. This started on a December, so I think we got we're like 1.5 years into this.
1.5 years, yep. And so because this is the third time the two of you have been on the show, you now officially become friend of the show on Storycomic.
Oh, wow.
So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
You get a logo, and it is expected that you'll put it on all of your YouTube, all of your YouTube thumbnails and everything. You know, half of the screen is fine. You wouldn't ask for anything more. So
I feel like we all have grown so much since we've come. We have proven ourselves absolutely shameless.
Yeah. Do anything for a plug, right?
There you go. See, exactly. So we were talking before we hit the record button, things that we wanted to talk about, and one of the things that we're kind of mentioning is just as of where we were a couple of years ago, shorts have become so pervasive. A lot of it people can, say it's because of TikTok, but you have your Instagram reels, and then you also have and YouTube now has shorts as well. And I got to say, like, the two of you have been very prevalent in doing your shorts. So talk to us a little bit about that. What's your technique? Kurt, you do something really cool. I got lost on one of your interviews you did. I saw that on TikTok. I was like, it was TikTok or Reels or something. It's like you'd pop up every other one. It was one of your Reels one of your shorts that you were doing.
Yeah, I've had a lot of really good, a lot of webcomic people, a lot of comic people have taken advantage of the paid service that I have, which is, besides the interview, it's putting together a minimum of 10 shorts based off of their interview. Wow. And so I try to format the questions so that they would, tell a story based on maybe a longer question, but, cut it down to 30 seconds to a minute. And so I've always liked shorts, but it's very time consuming. So that's been the main issue with short content creation. And I know there's tools out there that can do this more actively, but it's not at the level where it's just an instantaneous, okay, you can feed it to this thing and away you go. But so I like the more manual approach to things. And it's just amazing how you can take a 3-minute answer to a simple question and cut it down to 30 seconds to a minute. And so it comes about, how do you tell the story in that 30 seconds to draw interest? So one of the guests that I had on was Brett Giuliano, who does the Dust Bunny Mafia series. He came on because he was talking about playing cards that he was creating. And I asked a question like, were there any females in the mafia? Were there any like mafioso female, like high-end people in the mafia? And he had to think about that for a second. And so he got into a wonderful story about that. And that generated almost, I think, over 2,000 views alone, just because of the short content I got to put together, because I included images, I included different colors, text, I included the subtitles, which I think including subtitles for everything is necessary, because now you can see it on the screen and it's a nice visual pop as well. So there's color theory and a bunch of other things, but that was a great interview. I had a couple of more interviews with, say, Chris Solis and Aubrey Lynn Jepson for their Flag to Fly series. While those did well, the negatives portion of that was a different fan base was constantly downvoting their short content, like to the point of 1 positive and 10 negatives. And then it was just crazy how that side of the internet came up for those particular interviews or those shorts. So
explain a bit about that with the downvoting. How does that, so people were deliberately downvoting them because they didn't like the guest?
Yes. Quite literally. Apparently, it was the anti-LGBTQ community or whatever that decided that are actively searching for them online and constantly downvoting their content, no matter what it is, no matter what the message is on the content, and that's a shame because in terms of from an editing perspective, from an editor perspective, from the person that's putting together these shorts, especially for a client, you're trying to wonder, well, is it something you did or is it something that you put together? Did it get flagged for some reason? You're actively thinking like, how am I the cause of the short being downvoted? And I just speak with Chris and Aubrey about that, and they explained the situation. I'm like, okay, so it's not me. It's not the content I'm creating. It's another portion of the internet that are just tools.
With YouTube though, specifically though, Kurt, I believe even if you downvote something, it's still considered an interaction, and it actually like increases the algorithm as well.
Yeah, yes and no. The algorithm is just crazy in itself because you don't know what's going to make it positive or negative or generate the views. Because I'm posting this to Facebook, to Facebook Reels, Facebook Stories and Reels, Instagram Reels, TikTok, as well as YouTube, and um, I think those are the major ones these days.
Right.
Every single algorithm for every single social media platform, even if they're meta based like Instagram and Facebook, generates their algorithms completely different than say a YouTube would. So I could do really well on YouTube, and then it would just quite literally not do well on say Facebook
Okay.
or whatever. So you're playing a game with tags, with titles, with
my understanding of YouTube right now is that it's a mathematical equation based on reach percentage, how many people click versus pass scroll through, average listening, and then interaction of likes and comments. Now, if the reach hits 50%, you're gonna get a boost in your impressions. If you get 50% viewing, but the listening on average listening is below 50%, you're gonna get a hit on that. If it's over 50%, you're gonna get more impressions. They're gonna add you back in. If you're getting a lot of likes per view, you're gonna get hit back in, and you'll get more impressions that way.
Okay.
So it's a combination of about 4 different factors that if you hit it right, just at the right way, there's no way to guarantee which ones will get hit right. Some of my biggest ones have been the ones I didn't expect anything from.
Yeah.
But it's a mathematical equation based on reach percentage versus impressions, average duration of listening, interaction per view. And that's how you get your increase of your impressions. That's what I'm seeing anyway.
Yeah.
Reels is a different story. Reels used to be huge for me. Now it's like nothing. And TikTok was big for me, but now it's not as much. Now it's like all just YouTube shorts.
Yeah, the TikTok is a real TikTok is another avenue in itself. Like because they limit you specifically to 200 to 270 views or whatever per video you post without paying, because they're trying to push the whole pay for this boost and you'll get tens of thousands of millions of views type thing. And it's like,
I didn't know that. Okay.
oh yeah, there's a huge wave going on where you'll see advertising by TikTok content creators saying, are you stuck in the 200 or 300 view jail? Well, you should try TikTok boost. And I'm just like, one guy did that, and I did a comment and I said, it doesn't matter what your hashtags are to boost your views, because you're still going to be stuck in the 200, 300 view jail either way. It doesn't matter your hashtag strategy or whatever BS you're trying to push to the masses to sell a course or whatever you're doing. It's just like you're stuck there. Take the 200 views that you're going to get, push your content, push your shorts to drive traffic towards wherever you're trying to drive it towards, and leave it at that, and then focus on your other social media platforms to push your shorts. So,
and so here's the other thing too. What's both of your thoughts on the fact of, is it good to diversify and hit all the social media platforms, or just be strong on one or two?
I'll jump to my thoughts on this. My thought is posting is free. If you have the time, post everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
even if it's only to get you 10 more views, it's still 10 more views than you had. I don't think any of us are at the point where we're getting like hundreds of thousands of views and we can't use 10 to 20 boosts, And you don't know who's going to share it from there and who's going to then subscribe and who's going to add up. So you might as well just do it. Diversify, be as many social medias. Though I will say I've stopped using a few as regularly, like Blue Sky. I've realized this, to me, it feels like a waste of time now.
Yeah.
And beyond that, I feel like just diversify your content is more important. I did a lot for a little while. I was doing a lot with Star Trek, and I noticed that Star Trek started just stopping in views for me, or not stopping, but definitely like cratered. So I walked away from it for a few months, and then I started doing more Star Trek all over again, and now the views are back up again. I feel like at some point it's good to don't stay on one thing too long. If you're gonna do Marvel comic books, you move on to something else, get a little bit of some views somewhere else, and try to bring in as much diversity in your audience as possible.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. A lot of the people out there that are giving advice in terms of social media promotion and posting content, which I follow a lot. Just in general, I see the images. I'm like, oh, this is a good idea. Oh, here's a good posting time schedule for shorts and reels. Here's from Monday to Sunday. The times you should be posting your content. While those times are saturated, at least your own content is going to reach your own viewership. So when it comes to, say, posting of social media content, yeah, I agree with Jeff. Like if you're doing something like 20 reels or one reel a day that are just strictly reels, and you don't give yourself a bit of a break in between, like say just doing a picture post or a lifestyle post or something to kind of break up your content, then yeah, you're going to get hit like what Jeff was experiencing. And I kind of do that every so often
Right, and I'll say, what worked well for a little. I mean, and another thing, like what I've noticed as well is that when I post a lot of shorts, there was a period a few months back when I wasn't getting as many views on my regular YouTube because I was during the actor strike, and I wasn't getting the actors, so my views started dropping off. So I was doing a lot, subsidizing it with shorts, which used to get huge views for me. Then they stopped getting huge views, and they were stuck in the low 50, 60, 70, 80 views. And I was like, what the hell? Then I walked away from that for a while too. And then I started posting, like a few weeks later, started doing another post of, just random shorts, and they started getting huge views again. It is a timing issue. It's a algorithm of, at some point, if you overpost, they'll start dropping you, I think, a little bit. And what does work really well too is that dog videos. I think in like an 8-second video of my dog eating an ice cream cone, like close up, I got me like 3,400 views. I was like, all right, so I do all this hard ass work doing these podcasts, 4 hours of work to get each one, and my dog by itself for 8 seconds just blows them all away. Like, I'm a dog podcast now.
Yeah.
My YouTube video that has the most views so far, bar none, is a video that I took in 2013 of a cow loose in Concord, New Hampshire, like downtown Main Street. I'm like, what the? And I was taking a walk. I'm like, I'm recording this, and I uploaded it, and then like the local news outfit reached out and says, can we like use your footage? I'm like, yeah, give me credit, that's fine. That's like the
yeah, I see it. I have a ton of cat like things that crop up in my Instagram streams or as I'm scrolling through, and there's this one in particular that the tagline is the engine is running, and it's just the sound of the cat purring and being petted and staring directly into the camera. So it's super cute. Don't get me wrong, I love it, and it's just like this should be a 10-hour loop. Just the sound alone. This is great. This is soothing.
No matter how good of an interview you have, the dog is always going to win. I mean, a cute dog or a cute animal beats your hard work podcast any day of the week, and it's not even fair. But anytime every once a month usually, I have a video of my dog for about 30 seconds or so. They can find its way on my shorts just to give me a little boost in views.
Nice. Love it.
What I've noticed too, what I've done this past year is have interviews that last maybe about 30 minutes. Before it used to be like an hour to 60 minutes. And I've noticed that I've actually seen a steady increase in views and listening when I've noticed that I keep them a bit shorter. And what are your thoughts on that? Long form versus say like
Um,
30 or 20-minute interviews.
I have not seen a major difference right now in views. I've had some of my interviews that are like an hour long destroy some of my shorter interviews for whatever reason. But what I have started doing, which is helping a little bit, is that when I get some of these longer interviews that are especially with clear different topics, I split them into two now, and that seems to be a better way to get free views and get a nice boost because, like I said, the ones who watched that first video will also watch the second video. So instead of getting 130 views maybe in one video, they split
Mm,
off. Now you have almost 200 to 300 views by splitting into two separate interviews.
right.
And I've been doing some of that. It worked a lot. Worked well with Declan Shalvey for one interview, and then when I did John Billingsley, it worked really well. So I'm thinking when I get longer interviews, if there's strictly separate topic, if it's one topic, it's kind of weird to make a random cut. But if they're doing like one is like I did Declan Shalvey one 30 minutes. First 30 minutes he talked about Thundercats. The last 30 minutes he talked about Aliens, the comic book he's working on. I was like, all right, well that's two interviews. Cut in the
Yeah.
middle, threw them both out there. It worked. John Billingsley, one part he talked about Star Trek, and then the last 30 minutes he talked about a movie he was in. I was like, all right, cut that in the middle, send them out as both. The views were better.
Mm.
How did you label it then? Like, I'm curious on terms of your titling for.
I'm lazy with titles. I think my one title is John Billingsley talks Star Trek Voyager, and the next one was John Billingsley talks. I can't remember the name of the other movie he was in. Then I did Declan Shalvey talks Thundercats, and the next video was Declan Shalvey talks Alien.
Okay.
I just threw them out there with each one had a different picture, but the same like guy picture
Yeah.
of him, but the different project picture next to it, and I found they were better. So if I do bump into that situation again, I'm doing it more often. I mean, it's a cheat, but at the end of the day, it's like, there's nothing that says on your view count, but he did this, it's just your view count.
There's no asterisks beside your episodes, right? I get you. No, I think that's valid. I think that's a great way to split content, and it's content is content, no matter what it is. So yeah, it's just a matter of, like, for me, I've always done long format interviews. The shorts were more recently, as of at least last year to this year. It was a lot more frequent. Both are time consuming either way. So whether you're cutting up your interview into a long format and then you're taking your question and their answer and you're splitting that into short content, or you're downloading that entire content to cut it even shorter, it just still comes back to what's your quick 60 character title, what's your 200 character at most description, what three hashtags are you using, and when are you scheduling your posts in terms of getting the short content to your various social media platforms. So
Mm.
What I will say about hashtags, but I've been getting some. Well, first, it's hard to, without dedicating my entire life to studying the ebbs and flows of my viewership. I do find some anecdotal evidence that there are certain hashtags that do help. I've been using a lot of FYP. Hashtag FYP seems to get a good boost because there's so many connections. New release does pretty well by itself. Geek does pretty well by itself. Basic general terms often help a lot. And I'm finding like the bigger, like when I use a TubeBuddy, which
Mhm.
has a tag system to it. The longer
Mm.
ones are like John Billingsley talks scene 4 of blah blah blah. It's worthless. Short
Yeah.
hashtag seems to be what rules the day.
Yeah, like hashtag comic books, hashtag Star Trek, hashtag whatever, keywords that are part of that culture. You got to be careful with the FYP hashtag, as well as trending, as well as a couple of others that are overused to the point that they're saturated, and it can actually damage your content release basically to the masses.
Okay, can you go into detail on that a little bit?
Basically, there's a lot of phrasing in terms of hashtags that are saying, if you use, say, hashtag trending, hashtag FYP for you page, hashtag viral, things like that will actually damage your online in the algorithm. It will damage your score.
How so? I mean, I'm just curious. I really do want to know.
Yeah, no, it's just from what I've been reading, just up on how the algorithm is tracking these keywords. So
Okay.
if you look at TubeBuddy, if you look at there's another one that I use. I forget what it is. It'll say if you click on a hashtag, it'll show you the strength in terms of the search feature, but it'll also show you the lesser used hashtags. So you're basically trying to find the best hashtag to fit your content, but not the most overused hashtags.
Right.
And
so, because the reason behind that too, because the reason behind that is put in, I can't, depending on if it's Instagram or Facebook, depending on which is the one that uses the hash, which one is more prevalent with the hashtags. Say, for instance, you put in something that is, that's why if you type in a hashtag, it'll show you how many posts it has been posted before. They say have a good mix of ones, do a couple that are like 1 million plus, and do a couple that are like 100,000 plus, and do like maybe like 4 that are over 1,000. Because what it is like if you have one that's 1 million plus, because it's that many, you think about it in a day and in a second, that's your post you posted went boom, it went all the way down. It's no one's not even going to see it unless they literally look at that post at that moment, if they search for that hashtag. But say if you do a hashtag for something that's extremely like less than 1,000, and if people want to find that hashtag on that, your post is going to show up pretty darn quick. So that's why they say it's a good balance to put in some really big ones to help the algorithm, but then the other ones will say, all right, mix it up a bit. You don't want to have a bunch of like really popular hashtags because no one's ever going to see your post. Or everyone's, if they're searching for that particular hashtag, they're rarely ever going to find it. So,
and it's the same with, you see that with TikTok, you see that with you can definitely see the amount of popularity that the hashtags are used in TikTok specifically. In terms of YouTube and in terms of like Facebook and things like that, unless you're using like a TubeBuddy or the other one that I use, it just comes back to, is this hashtag actually showing up in terms of when you're typing it out? Because there have been some cases where I've typed Geek Talk or something like that, and for some reason it just doesn't appear. So it might be an unsearched or unused tag. So you don't want to fall into that pitfall where, oh, this is a really good hashtag, but no one's using it. So you just kind of waste space. Yeah, we're all learning. That's the thing. We're like what we talk about today and say our next quarterly group session is going to be completely different than what exactly we did a year from now. It's just, we're just trying to yell into the void as loud as we can and actually get our content.
I mean, the problem is, we're all trying to game the system, but the system changes the moment you figure it out.
yes, true.
It's like, was it Sisyphus rolling the rock up the hill?
Yeah.
We're all rolling the rock up the hill, but the moment we get towards the top, they change the rules around, and we end up at the bottom.
Darn you, Greek gods.
Just put hashtag puppy for everything. You'll be fine.
Well, that might get you a different avenue of the internet you don't want. So,
and that's the reason why too, is like, unlike being a baker or like a cement mason or somebody that actually like does work that they've been doing this the same way for 1,000 years, we work in an industry that changes literally every week. So it's one of those things where you always have to have that, where like, nurses have continuing education units, the CEUs that they have to always earn every few years. It feels like that, but for us, it's not like people are paying us. We have to learn it ourselves again and study it.
Well, it's sort of like, to use another analogy, it's sort of as well like being gamblers at a casino. We're trying to beat the house, and we got to keep finding ways to do it. And every time we come up with a way to either count cards or whatever, the casino's going to find a new way to outmatch you, and you got to just try to stay one step faster. The only issue is that where is the information coming from? Because most podcasters view each other as competitors, which seems at the level most of us are, we're not competitors for each other because there's not enough viewership that's going around anyway. But at the same time, it's that's why I think it's good to do this, because it's kind of like update each other on information. Like, hey, what did you learn in the last 3 months? It's like,
Right.
well, nothing, but what do you have?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and plus we're getting so busy with a lot of our guests and a lot of our content, and we're trying different things and different promotions, and short of paying $1,000 to just maximize a reach for a week type deal. We're gonna keep doing what we're doing because it's worked for us, and while we're still putting out the content we're putting out, our content still has value for someone, whether they're young, old, or maybe they want to get into an industry they know nothing about, and they happen upon our content. So
I, I will say, finally, I'm getting like recurring commenters that will comment on every show I do, and I'm I have a fan. It's just like, oh my god, hello fan.
And also too, one of the best parts about what we do is when you find like some of those guests that come on your show that because I know, and you all saw this, just a few minutes ago. It's that I'll start bantering even before I hit record, but we talk all the time anyway. But like, I was with somebody, I had a guest on, and I made it like basically it was a 30-minute interview. Before I hit the record button, we talked for a good 45 minutes, just joking around and having a good time. First time I ever met the guy. Like it's not like and then afterwards we recorded, we ended up talking for another like hour or so. I spent almost 3 hours talking to this guy, had a great time. And this is one of the benefits of it too, is that you meet some genuinely amazing people in the work that we do as podcasters.
Oh yeah.
I get the same thing with David Hewlett. He's been one of my favorite guests when he's on the show. I usually block out like the night because I know how, because like what we'll do is we'll usually talk for about an hour before I remember to hit record. So we'll talk for like an hour after, and then eventually his wife will be like, "Hey, are you ready?" And then he'd be like, okay. And then I gotta sign off. Like, okay, we sign off, and then we talk for like usually about a half hour about whatever. So it's like a good 2.5 hour block. And like I said, he's become like one of my favorite guests because like now we chat regularly.
Nice.
And it's like he's one of the few people. I still call him Mr. Hewlett, but I'm considering calling him David at some point.
Oh yeah. The fact that if you can talk to a person for multiple times for multiple hours, that's a friend at this point in time. That's not even a guest. That's like a comrade.
Yes, like I said, one day I will call him David. I haven't got that far yet, but I'm thinking the next time I may go right to David.
You should. Hey, David, how you doing today? Just throw it into your intro.
Yeah, just go for it. See, just call him David. See what happens. Sure, he'll answer. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you son of a bitch. I'm Mr. Hewlett.
That's the last time I'm on this show. Jeez.
This interview is over.
Yeah.
One day I really do want to see if a guest will ever just be like, "This is over," and just like hang up on me. Done. I've had a few guests that have become too big for me. Once, I'm not gonna say who the person is, but I had this one guest. And she was on the show, and it was a good interview. I mean, it did well for me. And then, like, now I guess she's bigger now, and I'll be like, "Hey, you're doing this. Come back on the show, right?" And the publicist is like, "No." I was like, "Okay." They didn't like the show. She's just too big. But I think she's now got too big. I'm just like, all right. I think that brings up the other thing you mentioned you wanted to talk about, the cancellation people. But this one guy, he confirmed the show. I bought his stupid comic books to do the interview. I got it confirmed the day before. He never showed up. Never apologized. I messaged him on Instagram, ignored me completely. I'm just like, what kind of arrogant jerk does that? But apparently this guy, it's like one of those things where it's like, if he's ever at a Comic-Con, I want to go up to him and be like, "Hey, remember me?"
If you even get that far until the handler / publicist goes, "Yeah, no interviews."
But I find it's hard to there's people who sometimes just miss the interview because they fell asleep or something else, and that's annoying. But it's the ones I think who like intentionally don't appear that make me the most angry. Like I can tolerate, like I don't care if you say no to my interview. People say no to me all the time. I mean, I think my numbers are like 25% of everyone I reach out to say no. I mean, not 25. I get 25% out of yes, 75% no to everyone who I ask, and that's fine. That's part of the game. I have people who have canceled on me a couple of days prior, and I'm pretty much okay with that. It's the ones who no show that burns my butt so bad. I said butt because I'm on Barney's show.
Right.
You did say butt, so that was good. Yeah. But, yeah, and so I actually was like, my wife watches this weekly show called TGIF, but it's T as in TEA, I guess.
Okay.
And it's this like a roundtable show where it's a bunch of people just talk about stuff, and it's and one of them brought up about apologizing, and this is pretty interesting. He said, "Why, when you apologize to somebody, it's like, do you apologize even though you know you're right? Would you still apologize to somebody?"
I'm Canadian,
And
so that's just habit.
that's exactly. But the answer, so what it is like, and the guy was talking about, he was talking to his therapist about this, and he said, and the therapist brought up a really good point and says, when you apologize, even though you know you're not wrong, you know, it's like you still apologize because it's not about facts, it's about the person's feelings. It's about the other person's feelings. It's not about how you feel, it's about how that person feels. And so if they feel as though, and plus it's about not winning an argument. It's about creating a communication. It's about, making sure communication is still up. So,
I mean, there comes a time where even if you say you're sorry, or even if you're at fault, I mean, there's a time and place for an apology. But when it comes to a cancellation, when it comes to like a lack of communication or no communication, like I had one person schedule an interview. It's like, oh, sorry, I'm at a comic convention this weekend in England, I can't make it. I'm like, not a problem, we'll reschedule. Here's the link, find something that works best for you. Cool.
Right.
He put in the wrong email address, and he missed a letter or something in his email, and I'm like, hey, I'm waiting on the show. He goes, oh, I didn't get the email, I didn't get anything like this. And then he looked at it and it's like, oh, it's my own fault. Well, will you accept like a payment or whatever for your time? And I'm like, yeah, sure, here it is. And then he never paid. So, it's just another person where it's like, all right, well, I appreciate the gesture, but you never actually gestured. So,
well, but a lot of it has to do with just a disrespect for the podcaster. And once again, I'm not gonna say names, even though I'm dying to. I remember this guy canceled me twice, and what he did both times, right? Because I guess he fell asleep at the time. So my rule is, if you confirm the interview, I wait 20 minutes. If you don't confirm, I'm out in 10. So after 20 minutes, because he confirmed it, I shut down my podcast. I go about my life, right? Turn on the TV, start relaxing. The guy messaged me. He's like, "So you ready to go?" It's like it's like 45 minutes after the interview was supposed to start. I'm like, "No." He goes, "Oh, come on." I'm like, "No. Why the hell do you think I'm going to come on 45 minutes?" And he's actually a known guy too. And I was like, "No. After 45 minutes, I'm done. I'm over for the day. You want to schedule for a different day? Maybe you can reschedule. But at this point in the day, I'm done."
Right.
Yeah.
And the amount of like shock of like, who are you to not drop your stuff to talk to me was almost unbelievable.
I mean, you could do the whole, well, look, I'm with my family now. This is my family time. If you respect that, then please let's reschedule.
Well, see, I don't even want to be that curious about it, because I think it's rude to ask someone that much time after the point that they didn't just assume you're going to jump back on. It's like, I think one person got to me at like, they got the time zone wrong, so it was like an hour and a half, it was like an hour later, and they're like, "Are you ready?" I was like, "No, it's this time." And he goes, "Oh yeah, so how about, well, I'm ready to come on now, so can you jump on and we can do this?" I was like, "No, it's an hour ago I was supposed to do this. I'm done with you. This is over."
I mean, at that point in time, it'd be like, okay, this is going to be the shortest 15-minute interview in the history of my show. There you go. Here's my 5 questions I'm going to ask you. That's it.
But I think there are a lot of guests though who have no issue knowing that you sat for 20 minutes, maybe even 30 minutes waiting for them to show, and we're perfectly okay with that time of yours being lost.
Right. Because
and that gets down to my point about the apology. Someone, they should apologize to you because of how you felt, not if they think they did something wrong. They obviously did something wrong by just not acknowledging your time.
Well, but at some point though, their ego gets in the way of their humility, so that's an issue.
Well, my other rule is I let 3 cancellations go before I'm done with you. And I have this one artist, I'm not gonna say his name. He didn't show up like 3 times, and the third time he's like, you know what, I'm sorry about that. I'm gonna send you a gift package or some shit. So send me your address. So I type out the address. Never showed up. Of course, it never did. And I was just like, and I don't know if he was waiting for me to be like, okay, well, because you did that or said that, I'm gonna invite you back on the show. I was like, no, I'll take the gift thing, because I've wasted what 3 different times,
Yeah.
15 minutes per interview. That's 45 minutes of my life,
Right.
But beyond that, but I think, there's a lot of audacity, I think, in the world of guests, and there's not a lot of respect for the podcasters. Who I think the fact is that the assumptions are doing us the favor.
Yeah, and that's something that came up a couple of months back as well. And this is something that we can comment on it or whatever. But the general consensus of the guest versus the guest and host of a podcast, like that dichotomy. Can't speak today, jeez. The dichotomy of the host and the guest, that interaction where the guest should be either paid for their time to be on the show. Now, if there's a big name and that's their policy, then sure, great, that's fine. And if you're in the stage to actually financially compensate them, then wonderful. But the other avenue is a podcaster host charging for an interview, specifically just for the interview. There's a big difference, and I want to stress this here. There's a big difference between a podcast host asking a guest to pay for an interview and a podcast host asking a guest to pay for a service they're providing. Like what I do is I have a service. My service is X amount of money. You get your interview still gets posted. And on top of that, you get X amount of shorts at this cost.
Right.
That is a service. That is not you're paying to be on the show. That is I am now creating shorts to drive traffic towards your product and or whatever you're doing. So that is a service-based model rather than a host paying or asking for money to be interviewed. So,
well, I mean, I've had a few people offer to charge me for the interview to be interviewed, and at that point it becomes a question of dollars versus view. I mean, how many views is it worth that dollar? Well, I mean, there's been a few are in the $500 range. I'm not gonna say who they were. And I paid for one person my entire podcast life. It was $250. I was like, you know what, screw it, I want this one. But I thought to myself, was $250 worth the amount of views I got from it? And it wasn't.
Right.
I mean, I'm thinking 250 views should be 2,000 to 3,000 views. Probably make it worth my while. It didn't come anywhere close to that. I was like, but at the same time, I mean, it was a fun conversation.
So let's talk about what are your projects? What is going on for you guys now? What have you been up to the last few months, and what are your projects are for 2024?
Well, in terms of myself, I made a great connection with a wonderful podcaster. She's a mother. She does a show called Better Call Daddy. Her name's Rena Friedman Watts. She's been a great advocator for connections, and if she's interviewed a guest, she'll say, hey, I know this show or this show or this show that you should really guest on, and then she'll do an email introduction. And I've started taking that approach in terms of my own guests that have come on the show, to say, like yourselves, and to other people that I've connected with over the past. And I think it's just another way to not only spread kindness or spread an amazing guest that could be beneficial to a new audience, but it's also something along the lines of making it just another connection to someone who you've never met before. I had one person more recently. She's a New York podcaster. Her interview is going to go up in a couple of weeks. And it was really a great conversation where she's a singer, a songwriter, but she's also a well-known podcast host. And her podcast got so famous that it got put into the How to Podcast for Dummies book, as well as the newest revision. So
Oh, wow.
That's just a whole nother level of a conversation that we had. And I'll be on her show later on in maybe I think a month or two, something like that. Anyhow, long story short, if we keep doing these connections and these like guests that we've had, on the show, if we think they can benefit other shows, then we should be spreading their names to these people, or at least do an email introduction to them to just get that generosity of them being on our show, but also get them to other audiences that might benefit. And I do this on social media, on Twitter, on whatever. But between that and I've done almost 36 interviews so far alone, and I have like 5 to edit, but great guests. And I have I'm going to have a few actors come on and that are doing their own podcasts, and just a lot of things are kind of piling up, it feels like. So I'm trying to get through it as much as I can and get the content
out. Well, for my show, potentially interesting things. I may have joined a podcast channel that I'm working towards finalizing, so it works out. It should be pretty good for connections. I think it's also some other connections to his network, which will be very helpful for me because we're going to connect our networks a little bit as well. I don't go into too much detail because it's not guaranteed yet. So, but it hopefully will be a thing. So I'm looking forward to that. I may have a pretty cool panel coming up that I'm going to be hosting with some Star Trek people. I don't want to jinx myself, but I can jinx myself. It's going to be about, it's from, hopefully, if it works out, if it can get scheduled properly, it's PanCan, which is the Pancreatic Cancer Association. And there's some Star Trek people, including John Billingsley and some others, who are basically could be doing a panel show for me, and I'll host it and as a way to advertise some big events that they're doing. So I'm kind of excited about that.
Nice.
Got some pretty cool guests coming in, assuming they show up. Robert Wool, I'm kind of excited about, from Batman Bull Durham. I'm pretty excited about. I got Frank Chow from Avatar.
Nice.
Coming on. The guy who played the puppet of Michelangelo from the original Teenage Ninja Turtles movie's coming.
Awesome.
A few comic book people I'm kind of excited about too. Hopefully they come on without jinxing too much. But it has some pretty good guests going, so I'm optimistic. So there's that. That's what's going on in my world. One more thing. April 4th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, the End of All Terminus issue 2 hits Kickstarter. I will be apparently hosting myself on Instagram, apparently. So give me your money. Thank you so much.
Oh, nice. That's a good plug. I can't beat that one there. So
perfect. Yeah. So do you guys want to do your this is tradition. You have to do your outro now. So you guys want to do your outros?
Well, it's funny because I just did Jeff's outro for a joint interview I did just to kind of help him out there, and hopefully he likes how I did it. And maybe I'll be the voice of your intro and your outro. So give you a break there.
Well, I will point out this is the first time I've had an outro since we've been doing these.
That's true.
I just started doing outros, I think, 2 months ago. So this is the first time I'm debuting my outro on your program.
Well,
let's hear it.
In that case, yeah, you go first. I'll sit.
Well, you already know it, Kurt. It's like I'm working towards it. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Versus Stars podcast. Please help me battle the algorithms by liking and subscribing. Until next voyage, travel on.
Okay. Well, mine is, of course, that ends this particular episode, in this case, of Storycomic Podcast. But, of course, I'm from Two Geeks Talking. You can, of course, find this interview and 1,200 plus others on our website, tgtmedia.com, or twogeekstalking.com. That's TWO. Website's going through a revamp, so go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TGTmedia. The podcast can be found at twogeekstalking.podbean.com, or just search Two Geeks Talking wherever you get your podcasts. And as I say every week, everyone has a story to tell. It's up to me to bring that out. Thanks for listening, watching on, in this case, Storycomic Podcast.
Perfect. And I don't have an outro. I just usually end up just saying, "Oh, thanks again for coming on. It was great talking to you." And then I have background music playing. So I'm gonna have to do an outro now. Yeah. So you gotta
look.
Yeah.
You have a
Barney.
You have a radio. You should have an outro for a podcast. Come on now.
I know. I got to have a good liner too in between too. See, I'm learning all these fancy words.
And a hand signal. He does the salute. I do the point. Apparently.
Yeah.
You got to come up with something. I don't know. Maybe like.
I'll go like wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Your connection. So
we can clean up Jeff's background noise then.
I think you say my inevitable swearing, but
yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's right. I'm the family-friendly show here.
yeah. Jeff's the hardcore guy behind the scenes there.
Yeah, that's right.
Apparently so.
He's going all Hollywood.
Yeah.